move on to Ophir Frieder, who is going to be talking about on democratizing data, diminishing disparity, and increasing scientific productivity. Ophir, why don't you just pick it up and plunge right in?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in. We've heard already in this webinar that some data are harder to democratize and are very difficult to share due to regulations such as HIPAA regulations. We've also heard that there's a cost in democratizing them. We heard that there's value to democratizing them and the value that data bring. And we've also heard that there's lots of efforts, including from major search companies, to develop tools that will provide us with the opportunity of finding these data sites. But I realize that I may be preaching to the converted, but I was asked to write a position paper on the value of data. And I'll give you a very short abridged version to it. Succinctly stated, data, when democratized properly, helps science and better society. So why? Well, the bottom line is, as you see from this graphic, data are everything and everywhere to everyone. And the real reason that you might want to talk about them is because data, not only from what we've discussed, but data are what's dominating and fueling the AI revolution. We keep on hearing about AI changing the world and affecting us all. Well, the reason it is doing so, or the means by which it's doing so, are the data that it trains on. And succinctly stated, the more data you've got, the better are your models. The better are your models, the more are the advances that the AI technology is making. So the bottom line is the data dominate. Now, this isn't new. In fact, even in 2017 and before that, but in 2017 in The Economist, data was touted as the world's most valuable resource. That was then not even new, and it was true, but true back then, and it's even more true today. In fact, the effort to democratize data is not new. In 1992, in order to improve the search technology, and this is before web engine, because it's before the web, NIST basically created what's called TREC. TREC was basically, and still ongoing, it's an annual event where data are published with evaluations, mechanisms put in place to improve search technology for the society. In fact, in 2006, AOL released its infamous query log, which has got lots of controversy attached to it. But even with that controversy, is still being used continuously to improve search technology. And as we heard that HIPAA or medical data have got problems to share, there are the mimic collections, which are from 96 and recently in 2023, it was another release, that started from very, very small collections to now rather large collections of basically de-identified medical data for us to use and advance our tools. Bottom line is data availability has fostered innovations in the diversity of industries and has helped society. But how is it doing so? How are people using it? Well, there's what's called a variety of AI models. Some call it pre-trained language models. There's a different type called large language models. It doesn't matter. We will grasp a name and call it foundational models, which is a common over-encompassing names. And as you know, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Now, before I get crucified by the accusation of copyright violations, which are common for this language model community, I will attribute this immediately to Shakespeare from the Romeo and Juliet. So the quote, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet," is obviously from there. But what about this data? What about these data? Well, we're needing more and more and more. And the reason we need more and more and more is because we are getting larger and larger and even larger models. In 2018, when BERT was released by Google, it was trained on about 3.3 billion tokens. In 2023, Meta's Llama with the original Llama is about 1.4 trillion tokens was training. Llama 2 is about 2.0 trillion tokens in training. And OpenAI, GPT-4, has an undisclosed training data, maybe because of the copyright issues that are now going through the courts. So what are these data models doing? Well, they're encoding the data. So there are those that argue that if they're already encoding the data, making themselves data, the models themselves, but if they're already encoding the data, do you actually need the data itself? Do you really need the raw data to actually use when you can use these models that have already encoded the data? Well, let's talk about human health. We've all experienced the common cold. And when we have the common cold or anything simple or of that nature, we go to what's called a generalist. We go to a primary care physician. That primary care physician knows a lot about many things and generally can answer all the questions we have for the general environment. In contrast, when we've got a very specific condition, a chronic heart condition or lung ailments, we wouldn't go to the generalist named the primary care physician. We would go to someone like the cardiologist or the pulmonologist. Such people are specialists. Well, that's no different from data. That's no different from models. For example, BERT is a generalist model. It will answer most of your questions and will answer most of your questions well. But if you really, really need specifics, if you really want to master something, for example, medical notes, you might go on what's the generalist was trained with specialist data, like medical notes, and you go to use clinical BERT. In fact, if you're interested in financial environments or financial information, you might go to FinBERT, which is based on trained specialized data on financial corpus. Or if for scientific text, you might go to CyBERT. And in fact, we've already heard in this webinar previously that people use CyBERT when they were trying to deal with information and trying to identify which data sets were used in the given documents. So indeed, specialization requires access to the relevant data access. Now, when you democratize data, it can help society. For example, Taiwan's National Health Insurance Research Database, NHIRD, which covers about 99% of Taiwan's population and spans about 2 decades of time and contains data that's been de-identified but still with some demographic information, has yielded clinical advances. For example, a prescription efficacy prediction that basically personalizes your treatment, namely for a given ailment you have, based on digital twins, the doctor can prescribe the precise medication that is most likely to be effective for you, based on your digital twin in the population. Additionally, treatments for dementia, pancreatic cancer, and other ailments have also been developed using this democratized data, namely Taiwan's National Health Insurance Research Database. So basically, the availability of this NHIRD has improved daily patient care. But I don't want to leave you with a note that says everything is rosy. You don't want to democratize data blindly. Why? Because some data are sensitive. They include personal identifiable information, which you don't want to leak, or they may contain proprietary information that you don't want to disclose. Similarly, some data are biased, some inadvertently, and some by intent. If you take information about consumer spending based on credit card information, it's obviously limited to those people who have credit cards. If you cannot have a credit card, you're not represented there. So as long as you understand that, you can use it. But again, some are biased by intent. And some are just flawed. Poor measurement errors, poor procedural errors, poorly generated gold standards and understanding. So they too are a problem. But one should leave with an optimistic statement for a brighter tomorrow. So if you democratize data, it will foster scientific and social innovation, as I've discussed. It will provide greater participation because not only just the owners of the data, but others could utilize it. It will improve decision-making by supporting things like specialization. And once data is democratized, it will enhance transparency because you'll see what is being used. It will obviously then expose the bias for the same reason, potentially. And it will enable discovery and repeatability for verification. Bottom line, safe, accurate, privacy-protecting, democratized data opens possibilities yet to be comprehended. I thank all those that have commented on my papers, including the anonymous referees. I was told I have 10 minutes. It's now 9 minutes and 58